Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces. IO psychology. What is it? Why is it important? What are the latest developments in this field, and how can they make your workplace more harmonious? Also, how many IO psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Keep listening to find out. Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. As always, we're glad to have you with us today. I'm Rich Cruz, joined by my colleagues Cheryl Volpe. Hey,
Hi,
Cheryl.
everyone.
And Ben Kleinman.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about industrial organizational psychology, or IO psychology. And why are we going to do that? Because I spent 4 days in Chicago at the SIOP conference, and what a ride. So good morning, folks. How you doing today?
All right. Hey, not even 1 minute into it, and we've already got our first acronym. So please tell us. SIOP, S-I-O-P.
SIOP stands for the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology. And it's Division 14 of the American Psychological Association, or APA. And that's there you go. Oh, there's acronym number 2.
APA.
APA. You know, we should fill this up with something a little stronger than water or coffee and have an acronym break off.
All right. Next podcast will be all acronyms.
All acronyms, baby.
Okay.
So
TMI.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Cheryl and I both went to Purdue, and we have master's degrees in industrial organizational psychology, and so
maybe
that's brought us to
SIOP.
Well, to
Maybe
SIOP and to OCM, actually.
Before we dive into this nuts and bolts of the conference, Rich, that you went to, maybe just explain the top line for people like me who don't really know a lot about IO Psych, what that is, what the vision is for someone who practices IO Psych or who's a theorist, an academician in IO Psych, and kind of how that comes to fruition. And then that might lead into some of the things that you experienced at the conference.
Sure. Well, in the words of some of the people over at the conference, right, there's a lot of IO-y things that people like you in change management do all the time, right? So IO psychology is defined as the scientific study of human behavior in the workplace. Now, we're not psychologists unless you have a PhD. So in the state of Illinois, you cannot be called a psychologist unless you have a PhD. But a lot of people have a master's degree or even a bachelor's degree, and they could be a practitioner of the study, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of tracks of people that are in there, so that you have a very academic track, and holy smokes, where there are a lot of PhDs at this conference. So it's a very academic world, and in some sense, because it's largely the scientific research of how people interact and act at work, right, and behave at work. And then there's this consulting track, right, which you do not need to have that credential. You do not need to be called a psychologist, but you can still do the kind of stuff that the three of us do, right, in the sense of being a consultant, right? So we do abide by the APA Code of Ethics, and just to kind of illustrate if I can. And Cheryl, you correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know if I'm off base here. But we have this industrial side, right? And that's where IOPsych really began, right? Was like, how can we get the most out of our people, and what do they need to perform the tasks that we need them to perform, right? So that is it's also called personnel psychology. So that's the industrial part, and that's concerned with matching people to specific job roles, and it focuses on job analysis, like what does it take to to do the job, to do the work, task requirements, efficiency, ergonomics, safety, and basically kind of the nuts and bolts of work, right? But then we have people who have to work together. And we have those individuals that are in there. And here's where, organizational change management and or OCM, another acronym, come into plays. It comes into play here, right? Where
And is that the O in?
That's the O side. That's
Okay.
the organizational side, right? So
Okay.
that's where people learn how to work together. It has to do with motivation. It has to do with how the organization affects the individuals. Has to do with team dynamics, leadership, collaboration, and organizational culture, right? So that, I think most of what we end up talking about here falls on the O side, right? But there's always that task side that's in there too. Yeah.
Great. You hit every point.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's very helpful.
Good.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
I do find myself explaining it often when people say, so what did you study and what do you offer through your consultancy firm? And the IO tends to throw people, but it's changing. I see more and more people saying, oh, all right, I know what that is. Other people I talked to, like I said, Naomi Shragai, and she's a psychiatrist at work, and they just call it organizational psychology. They don't have the I part in it in the UK. So I had to explain that a little bit. So definitely feels new and exciting, but the familiarity is definitely expanding. I see.
Yep. The the industry says that we have the worst branding on the planet because nobody knows exactly what we do. And therefore, when you go to try to, get a client or find a job, and you tell them you know IO psychology, like, what is that?
So is that what the conference here in Chicago was all about?
Well,
rebranding, how to explain IO psych.
Well, you're talking to a bunch of people who they already know, but actually that was one of the sessions. There was how do we rebrand this to where it's something that makes sense to people,
It's, at least in the worlds that I travel in, it seems like a lot of that first part, the industrial part. How do you get you described it nicely, Rich. How do you get the most out of your people? How do you help manage job roles and analyze jobs and tasks and efficiency and stuff like that? It seems like a lot of that right now, and at least again in my world, is under the umbrella of human resources. And a lot of the other stuff that you mentioned, more of the O or the org psychology, is about the team dynamics and the collaboration and the org culture. It seems like that is somewhat in HR, but not really. It seems like that's led in maybe smaller pockets, or bigger companies have groups of people that sort of specialize in that. Sometimes it's continuous improvement. Sometimes it's org culture. Sometimes it's just people who are really interested in that, and leaders who are very attuned to that. They focus on that, and they might kind of push their teams in that way. But it doesn't seem like that part of it has such a great home. And I'm not even sure if it makes sense for all of it to be under HR, or if it makes sense to try to blend the two and have its own kind of special thing. But it's just interesting to see where those sometimes fall in different organizations, and where oftentimes they sort of fall through the cracks, if you will. How do you guys see that in places where you all work?
I will say the O in organization often is connected in my mind in the way I see environments with operations, right? The O is also operational. And if you keep that in mind,
Okay.
let's clarify it a little more, right? HR has somewhat of a channel, a track that it stays in. And the organizational part incorporates human resources, but also everything else that dovetails into HR could be operational. Do we have, not just the kinds of people and the issues and the tools that they need to manifest their full potential, which could be seen as HR, but do we have enough people to do the task? And that's more of that operations organizational kind of thing as an example.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very astute. Because traditionally, yeah, the I side really does fall under that HR umbrella, like you said, and because that's selection, that's performance reviews, performance evaluations, I should say, but it's determining fit and whether or not there's going to be termination or promotion, right? That all tends to fall under that HR umbrella. It's interesting. One of the sessions to which my friend Brendan Gretsch was on, it was a panel discussion, right? But it was building strategic leadership in HR, because it was really and it was actually called blurred lines, because we have that happening where we need to build leadership within HR, right, to help with the rest of the organization, right, and that often goes undone, right. So then you bring in consultants, or you're stuck trying to figure out, how do we bridge that, right. So I thought it was an important topic, particularly for small businesses who may not have much of an HR staff, much less somebody who that has any kind of leadership or sway. They administer benefits and do payroll and maybe onboard a few people here and there. So
can I ask you, Rich, that the lines can be blurry? Was that seen as an advantage or disadvantage for people who do what we do? Was it seen as a strength that these roles are merging and it is a little blurry, or was that like we gotta fix this?
Oh man, I'm gonna say the thing I heard all 4 days. It depends. It's the classic consultant, industrial organizational, OCM, whatever it is. It's our classic answer. Right. Yeah. It needs ID. Yeah. I mean, really, it does, because they were saying that, it's an opportunity, right? If you don't have it, yeah, it could be a weakness. Yeah, there's some blurriness there for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Rich, thanks for clarifying, because it seems like there's an opportunity to make that a little clearer as a organization, as individuals practicing this kind of stuff. It seems like there's an opportunity to say, here's when it makes sense to try to merge these and have a central focus, and here's where it makes sense to kind of keep maybe some of the I a little bit separate from some of the O. And it's just going to make our organization be a little bit better right now, given the people we have and the leadership and the focus and all that kind of stuff. And maybe that's something that as practitioners, it's on us, or I should say on you guys, to come in and help clarify where each type of activity can best sit. And so that's it depends is a nice way to sort of gloss over that, but it leads to something to where it says it's up to each of us as practitioners to really guide that part of the conversation. And at the end of the day, not worry. At least to me, I always go back to, it doesn't matter so much what you call it, but what are you doing, and is it adding value?
Sure.
And then you can try to set it up that way.
Sure.
Right. I did want to go back on one thing you said, Rich, about the just briefly, the job analysis is it sounds like such a simple thing, but there are so many layers to the analysis of a job. And a lot of people don't even really understand sometimes all of the details that it takes to do their job fully and well. You see these job descriptions for positions that are open. A person may get into that position, and although the job description for a new hire may be a bit lofty and sort of a catch-all for many, many things, it still doesn't get explored to the full extent that it could when a person is hired into that position and the job and the role is still not defined. And job analysis is a very useful process to sit with a person who has a role and use, for example, ONET, O*net. I love ONET. A treasure trove of information about just about every kind of job in the world, what their requirements are, consistent language across all the jobs, salary expectations, everything. And I just love ONET. But the job analysis is an overlooked detail that can be very, very interesting. And when there is clarity for a person's role, it helps keep down the disenchantment, the disengagement, the confusion, the burnout. Those job analyses are very interesting. And that is something an IO practitioner can specialize in.
For sure.
Which is different than HR. Yeah.
Yep. You said one of my favorite words, clarity. I love that. So important.
That's right. Yep.
Okay, let me do a quick check-in here. We've been talking about what IO Psych is. We've talked about how there's the industrial side, trying to get more out of our people or help our people be as good as they can be. We've talked about the org side, and that's just really looking at individuals within the organization and team dynamics and collaboration. We've talked a little bit about where those sit, how sometimes they merge, and whether that's good or bad, and what our role might be. Let's maybe spend a few minutes talking about what kinds of things you were gleaning from your conference that you went to, Rich, or if there's anything kind of top of mind that you feel like you'd want to share with folks here. And then before we wrap up, we definitely have to understand how many of y'all it takes to change a light bulb.
Can't wait to find out.
Does anybody have an answer to that? Because I have two.
Does it depend?
There was one of them. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Ben. That's
okay. So Rich, what were some of your favorite takeaways from the conference?
Couple of takeaways. One, AI is going to take over the planet. Really, every single hour there was some artificial intelligence discussion, and you know, and it makes sense for. I mean, it's an important thing to talk about. You know, from generative AI to, you know, one of the things in IO psychology, especially because it's a science, right, is that statistics plays a very important part of the research that they do. So to do that statistical analysis, a lot of the scientists have turned to using AI. You still have some degree of whether you're using SQL or Python or these other programming languages that people use in statistics, or even Excel, which, by the way, I'm taking a course on that right now. It's a handy thing to have, but they're leveraging these AI tools to be able to condense the process, arguably make things a little more reliable and valid, you know, to what they're trying to measure and do. So, so that was an important thing to look at. Then coaching was just everywhere, right? And we talked about living and becoming comfortable with ambiguity, right? How do we do that? We have to have some degree of coaching and some peer help or some managerial help in the workforce. Whether that's from a consultant or from somebody on staff, but we talked a lot about some different types of coaching techniques, and there's all kinds of talk about certifications and skills and the likes that you can learn. And the last thing was assessment. It was just like all the different schools of thought on what assessments to use. And there's culture assessments, there's individual assessments. Oh, how dare you use this one because it's not valid or reliable, and this one's the best one on the planet. And then you have other people who are like, oh, that one's just absolutely hot garbage, go to this other one. So there was
fire, I think, was the term of art that we liked last time.
The last time, yes, yeah.
Rich,
I'm not going to mention any of the ones that they thought were tire fire, but I'm going to make the shape of one of them. the just
fire.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say the one.
So a little bit. It sounds like a little bit
really
of,
against.
a little bit of kind of current trends with AI, and I'm assuming that covered generative AI. It sounds like a little bit of coaching and that consultant kind of stuff, and then a little bit of the academia in terms of which assessment is fit for purpose, which is better for X or Y or Z.
Right. Yeah. Were the vendors, Rich, my question, were they selling assessments as well? Were some of the vendors selling assessments? Was that something that was part of the economics?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, there were plenty of different types of assessment centers that were there that they were selling like a battery of assessments you could do. Hogan was probably the one that I heard the most of, which is an individual assessment. But there's there were a lot of different vendors there that like offered suites of assessments as well. Yeah.
Fabulous. I know that we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm not going to let you get out of this without talking about the talent show.
Oh man, the talent show. I did. Did you know about this, Ben? There was in a talent show. Yeah,
you mentioned last time that you were going to be in a talent show, and it was like not just one or two of your closest friends, but
it was not the 800 that I was told, which is that made me feel good. It was like, it was a ballroom and everybody was sitting at a table and everybody had a little, a couple of drinks. So I felt a little better about that. We had some really great talented people that came up there. In fact, I while I was at the conference, I wrote a blog and shot a short video on creatives in the workplace, because I'm seeing these folks we had a Tahitian dancer that was there. We had a poet who read a poem that she wrote. We had somebody who reimagined a Celine Dion song as a way to tell her boss, tell his boss off. There was we had somebody who led karaoke. We had a couple of stand-up comedians and a guitar player, and then I played the harmonica. So it was Did
you tell your boss off with your harmonica?
No, but it was absolutely not what I prepared at all. I literally was like practicing and like, okay, but this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to use this looper pedal, and I'm going to make this a really cool experience. And like we couldn't get it to work, so I had to go like total old school, and I played the harmonica with a hand drum and a tambourine on my foot.
Wow, cool.
So, had to improvise.
There you go. Yeah. That was problem solving right in front of everybody.
So
it sounds like a super fun event.
It was a fun event. I got to meet some great people. I got to connect with people, that are, we're in this 2D space here. It was great to see people in 3D, which is always fun. Yeah, I think it was a very good and enriching experience. A few things that I would say, I would love to see fewer panels and more like meaty content. You know what I mean? That's one takeaway I can give you. SIOP if you're listening. But other than
Meteor
that,
content.
there was some good, yeah.
Yeah. I bet there'll be some kind of survey. I'm sure they'll want some kind
Oh,
of.
there was, yeah. I already filled that up.
Will they use the right assessment though?
Well,
Will they use the good assessment survey or the tire fire survey?
right.
And how they, analyze this.
How reliable is this survey, right?
Right.
IO psychologists love their surveys. For sure. And it's actually, it is very applicable to some of the change management stuff that we talk about, because and learning or after I do a training session or whatever, I like to get a survey out there of how did you feel about this? Because it's, again, that kind of goes to this Kirkpatrick model of training evaluation, where reaction is the first part of it, right? So I want to know how they felt about what we did. And when I have a decent sample size and I know that people felt like they got something out of it, I know I did a good job and that's going to stick. And when I have a very low adoption of that survey, or I get a whole bunch of, ones and twos, I know I got to change things up and try again.
Nice.
That's great. And that also ties into what we were talking about last week about the psychological safety dovetailing with comfort with ambiguity, that rapid prototyping with take an action, get the feedback, the survey process, fail fast, learn fast, adjust, and keep moving forward, right? That whole feedback process. Mm-hmm. So it's great that you have made a practice of that quality assurance also.
For sure. Yep. And that is, this all, everything that happened at this event, everything that we've learned in IO psychology, it's all stuff that we talk about here amongst the three of us, all the time, because it's people at work, it's the very human part of work.
Yeah. I was going to say, it sounds a lot like some of the things that we've talked about, or some of the things that we've focused on over the course of our various episodes in terms of dealing with a change like AI or some other new thing that's going on at an organization. How do you coach people through that? How do you assess what's working, what's not working? How do you assess this sort of level of kind of safety or psychological safety within the organization? How are your teams doing? How do you coach them to be better? Or how do you coach people along that change journey? How do you clarify that message for people? So it sounds like it's all very much on point with things that we've teased out over the last 10 or so episodes, and just an interesting way to break it down and look at it in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that I think maybe we should talk about a little bit in a future episode is, when we're working with different people, the diversity of people in the workplace. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of what, DEI and is one part of it, which is kind of getting included more into human resources than like an individual piece, but there was a lot of that at this conference that I failed to mention earlier. But that having, we have these like in groups. And we talked about LMX theory, leader member. Wait, what's LMX again? Is it leader member exchange theory, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, thank you. We talked about that a few episodes ago. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you guys can go back and
42.1% of people will have no idea what you're talking about.
Have no idea. Look it up. But seriously, we did talk about that a few episodes back. But what happens there is you have these in groups and you have these out groups, right? And the in groups tend to be kind of homogenous, right? But when you have, when you have something that's more diverse and uh, where it's more inclusive with more people, you're going to have more conflict, but you tend to have more creative stuff happening there too, right? And so, and once you get past that storming stage of group development, you actually get some really great stuff happening there. So that might be something to talk about, but it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah, I like that. There's been a lot of research that says that having more different types of folks in a room helps you make better decisions. And I wonder if some of that comes from that conflict, or at least sharing of different opinions and different perspectives, even if it's not in a traditionally understood conflicting kind of a way, but you're bringing new ideas to the table. You're surfacing different ways of approaching something. You're bringing that creativity and that sort of variegated ways of thinking. And then you can hopefully lead to better decisions that come out.
Yep. So let's explore.
It sounds like a good conference. Before we go, tell us, how many IO psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
Only one, but the light bulb needs to want to change. And the other answer was, it depends. And the third answer was only one, but it's an 8-stage process.
Did you write that?
I the last one I came up with, the previous two, they were there, but the last one
that's really good.
I'm going to take credit for the last one.
I like it. That's good.
I like it too.
Well, thank you.
Well done.
I'm here all
Sounds
night
like
to
time well spent.
Yeah, it was for sure. So,
good.
Couple of recaps here. Ready for that?
Yeah. What was? I guess for me, one of the things that was interesting to learn after your 4 days at a conference is that what we're talking about is very much on point and very current and very relevant for a lot of organizations and practitioners out there. So I feel like we're swimming in the right ocean. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to condense a lot of that into maybe more practical or hands-on, approachable kind of way for your everyday person who wants to have a harmonious workplace.
Exactly. Yep.
And I am very excited to see 6,000 people and 900 panels, that an organization like SIOP can organize that in a way that seemed very edifying for you. You would recommend it. You would go again. That is an accomplishment. And it can only help people understand more and more and embrace the ideas that IOs bring to the table and work with us now that the understanding of what we're bringing is becoming more prevalent and understood. So
sure,
it's great.
That's beautiful. Yeah, actually, that I didn't think about that, but boy, there were so many. The SIOP doesn't have a big staff, right? So there were so many volunteers there, right? So imagine you have to manage all of those different presenters, the volunteers that are helping to guide people around, all that stuff. Yeah, that's an amazing feat of organizational management for sure.
Producing, those people are producers. Yeah,
Yep.
Brings back memories.
And my big takeaway is that I need to figure out those 8 steps to change that light bulb.
Yes. Yeah. I hope safety is one of them.
Safety is one of them.
And
turn the power off first.
That's right.
Don't stick your finger in the socket.
Right. Yeah, I will have to develop a task analysis on how to do that.
There you go. Well, if you need any consultants, I think we know some people who can help.
That's right. That's right.
Recruit a spotter. I'll hold the ladder.
Well,
Nice one. Thank you all.
Well, thanks a million. This has been great. We will return back with our next episode very, very soon. Please tune in. Again, you can find us on your favorite streaming platforms. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and a whole bunch of others. So and you can also find us at www.harmoniousworkplaces.com over at the podcast page. And we look forward to seeing you real soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Bye,
folks. Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network. And remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.